Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I want to wish you a very warm welcome to Paperchain Bookstore. This evening gives us a lot of pleasure to have Daniella Brodsky here to talk about her new book, Vivian Rising. We're going to have a little discussion about the book, and if you have any questions at any time, feel free to jump in and ask. There'll be more time after the discussion to ask questions and talk to Daniella about the book and get your book signed. Okay. So, what inspired you to write Vivian Rising?
Let me know if this volume isn't good. Is that good? Okay. Well, Vivian Rising actually kind of took me by surprise. I was ready to start something new, and I just sort of didn't. It was the first time ever I didn't have a plan. There were some other books that I was thinking about, and I just decided, you know what? I feel like something's coming. So I was on a train. I'll never forget it, and it was about a year and a half after I lost my grandmother. And I guess somewhere in your subconscious, it's just swimming around there, waiting to come out. And so I just started writing, and here was this girl, and she was locked in an ensuite bathroom, and on the other side was mayhem. Her grandmother was dying, and the whole team was there, trying to revive her. And I really thought, I want to put her in this moment where you say, I feel like, you get to that moment where you're thinking, oh God, this can't happen. And sometimes you feel like you're going to do whatever it is, talk to God, or, just wish really hard, or your lucky coin, whatever it is. And you just think, you're so desperate. Sometimes you just think, okay, I got through. I feel like I got through. It's not going to happen, But of course, it did happen because, she was very ill and she was going to die. And so what happened to Vivian was, even though she had had a very trying life, she lost her faith because she felt at the moment when she really needed help, she was abandoned. So somebody who was very up and always looking for the bright side, but yet living a very sort of safe life, all of a sudden she's on her own here and she needs to find a way to make it. So I wanted to capture that sort of now what moment that we all go through, whether, if you get a divorce or somebody you love dies, or perhaps, the career you thought you would have, you just say, okay, it's not working out and I'm going to have to find something else, and so sink or swim.
What made you decide to use astrology as her coping mechanism?
I think that when you have any of these situations, and in this case, grieving over someone that you love, the things that kind of bump you onto the bright side are always so unexpected. You never know what it will be. It could be, a book. For instance, for me, a lot of times a book can change my perspective, a piece of art, a movie, talking to a friend. And the thing I noticed about astrology is that so many people were always talking about it, and they either thought it was total BS, or they checked it every single day and said, oh, don't buy a computer now, Mercury's in retrograde, and all these crazy things. And so, and I know people on all ends of the spectrum, and they're all pretty normal otherwise, so it's not like it's just a kooky thing. And I myself, I have this sort of fascination. There are so many things that can't just be similarities. How is it possible that I could read this description and it's exactly me, So I really did want to learn a lot more about it. So I thought it would be a very good way to show how something unexpected could illuminate some issues that you have in your own life. And also, when I was researching it, it turned out to be fantastic, because I found that whether or not you believe in astrology, the vocabulary that they use and the insights that they have, if you take those few minutes when you read your horoscope to think about what your problems are or what you want to work on, the way they articulate it is so helpful that sometimes it can actually make you look at things in a different way.
So, what made you, tell us a bit about the setting of the book. Why did you choose to set it in Brighton, in Brooklyn?
Yep.
Brighton Beach, sorry.
Well, I chose that neighborhood because one of the things that, when I decided this was going to be the story I was going to write, my grandmother's home and where she lived in this town in Brooklyn, which it was a very unique area, very densely populated, lots of families, everybody living right on top of each other. Dinner time, you'd hear all the moms screaming out into the street for all the kids to sort of come up, and everybody knew everybody's business, and your mom lived upstairs and your sister lived downstairs, and it was this very sort of Jewish community from a lot of people who had left Eastern Europe. And what I noticed over the years was it had changed so much, and most of those people had left, mostly because they started building all these highways out to a suburb, Long Island, which is pretty close to Brooklyn, about 20 minutes. And people started buying cars, and they realized instead of living in this little tiny 2-bedroom, we could have a big house by a beach. So it really was a whole flight from that neighborhood, and there's so few people left, and my grandmother was one of the last holdouts. You know, they were trying to always buy her apartment from her for like $1 million, but she was still paying about $600 rent every month, you know, because she'd been there for 40 years. So, you know, I thought this is a place that needs some remembering, and I wanted to pay a tribute to her.
So, in a lot of your novels, the main character is experiencing some sort of great upheaval and having to rediscover themselves or reinvent themselves. Is that something that you've gone through in your own life?
I think that probably, look, I'm very obsessed with that idea of how do you become who you are, and what does your, you know, your childhood and your history and your experience do to make you who you are now. And every time you meet somebody, you know, you've got this whole new fascinating history to learn. Whether you like the person you meet or you don't like the person you meet, it's pretty interesting to find out how they became that. So thankfully, I'll never run out of things to write about, because that's just sort of an endless pot to dip into. But myself, I think, again, probably subconsciously, this is very interesting to me, because when I was very young, my father became very ill. He had a very rare blood disorder, and you know, very young, you know, you go from this sort of perfect suburban life to, oh my God, you know, and do we have enough money to pay the rent, and where are we going to live, and you know, it was so different. And I think having had both sides, it fascinates me even more. And I'm very interested in, you know, if you had parents who were very supportive of you, how that's reflected in who you are now. If you had parents who were maybe always giving you a hard time or arguing, or, you know, maybe had other problems, addiction or whatever, how did that affect you? And I think it's fascinating to see how that comes out.
And so you've been living in Australia for a few years now.
Almost.
Do you think you'll be setting any of your future books in Australia?
I am actually about to start working on one inspired by a man here tonight from the Petherick Reading Room at the National Library. And it's going to be set at the National Library, and it's going to be called the Petherick Files. And it's going to be sort of a booky person's thriller in the spirit of making research as exciting as it is to me, to all the readers of the book. And I sort of call it a write-along, inspired by like a police ride-along, because you'll get to see how somebody can take, you know, some raw material research, whatever it is, a manuscript, or they have so many artifacts at the library, pretty much anything, pieces of music, and how that can inspire somebody to then create a story. And I think the fascinating thing is, when I got there, I just realized there were so many things there, and it was a little overwhelming, you know, to think there are these secret catacombs everywhere filled with books and, you know, pieces of music and works of art and photos, and, you know, you just
books
couldn't...
with human skin.
Books with human skin, which are really creepy feeling. And, you know, you just think anyone who looked at any of these items would do something different. And I just want to capture all that potential.
Is there any particular item you've stumbled across that's struck?
The inspiration? Actually, I did touch the human skin book, but and I might give it a little, you know, mention. But no, it wasn't inspired.